Hi, I'm Imi.
I'm Andy.
We've been in a relationship for almost 7 years. We date and sleep with women together, exploring kink, BDSM, as well as self-development on this channel.
And a question that I get a lot from a lot of you is, what do I say on dates? I'm on a date with a woman, or any ladies out there, I'm on a date with a guy. What do I talk about? I want to start from the premise that it really doesn't matter too much, I promise. That said, a lot of the time people will still say, yeah, just tell me what to fucking say. Okay, here is your cheat code. Something that we do a lot on dates, we have these sort of card games that we use that are prompts that have a whole bunch of questions that you can ask each other. Some of them are just sort of general questions. Some of them are sort of deeper, meaningful questions. Some of them are sort of a little bit flirty, a little bit sexual. And they're kind of a nice bridge to get from not talking about sex, we're not talking about relationships, to, okay, now we can talk about this stuff. You're kind of just reading off what's on the card, and it kind of gives you permission to talk about the sex stuff a little bit more. So some examples of what we're talking about. Some of the questions are things like, what are 3 things you feel grateful for right now? What was the kindest thing someone has done for you recently? What was the kindest thing you've done for someone recently? What is something that made you laugh out loud last week? What was one funny or weird rule you grew up with? I have like 100 rules that my mother just had so many interesting.
You're going to say normal ones, like she was like, turn the lights off after you leave the room.
No,
Oh my
listen.
God, that's so weird.
Listen, if you left the bedroom for like literally 10 seconds, my mother was there like a hawk, and she would come in and turn the light off and be like, turn the light off. And I'd be like, I'm going to the kitchen to get water, and then I'm going back. It doesn't matter. The light needs to be off if you're not in the room. Like,
And
you know
now-
when parents get really stuck
I
on
do.
rules?
But
Yeah.
now you rebel by leaving the lights on constantly.
I leave
all the
lights on
time, all
the
day.
time. Yeah. Some of them are a little bit more self-improvement focused, which I like. What is something that you would like to achieve next week? Was there something you planned on doing last week but haven't? What is a recent mistake you've made and have learned from? What's something you've recently done and are proud of? And these are really, really, really good ones to get you talking about self-improvement and ambition and all of that. And then you can screen for people who are into the same sort of things as all of you, which is being ambitious. And then there's some that are a little bit more sexual, or maybe you would say flirty. In this moment, what would you choose, sex or cuddling? What is a recent time when you flirted inappropriately? What is the dumbest thing you have said to someone during or after sex? What would you like to experiment with sexually that you've not done yet? If you could clone yourself, what would you do with your other self? And maybe not so much flirty as completely fucking hilarious and possibly inappropriate. Where would you shove a pickle for $1,000? Leave your comments below. So you can see how some of them are nice little icebreakers.
And something that I really like as well is that it stops conversation being a little bit samey, a bit like, what do you do for work? How do you find work? What do you do for fun? What's that like? It can get a little bit repetitive. And I even really like bringing these to like parties or like social things if I don't know people. And I've actually had friends be like, oh, can you actually bring some of those along again? Because I really liked that, because it starts good conversation going, and then you don't need to rely on them so heavily. It's just a really good point to get things flowing a bit better and keeping it interesting as well.
Like you said, they're deeper topics of stuff that you can talk about that isn't just the boring, what do you do for work? Oh, I work here. Do you like it? Yeah, it's okay. What do you do? Oh, I work here. Do you like that? It's okay. Like, these open the floodgates to start talking about deeper stuff. And some of them are quite deep and meaningful, especially if you use some of the apps. Like, one of the apps that we like is an app called Party Cues. And there's different categories in that app. And one of the categories is called Deep. And there are some pretty decent questions in here, like, is it important to love yourself? Why or why not? When was the last time you cried, and why? What is a principle you live your life by? And which is the hardest type of love for you to give, and why?
And I think the thing that I also like about these is that even if we had a list of these questions in your head, it can almost feel like they'd come a bit out of nowhere. It almost feels like it's a nice bridge to have this physical thing to be like, here's a fun activity we can do. Now I can ask more out there questions versus like kind of forcing some, I guess, less common questions into conversation.
Yeah, like we have a whole bunch of these. We literally just bring these to a date. You know, you pull them out, you've got all the actual cards here, and you're like, let's go through this. We'll open the box up. Here's all the cards. You say to the other person that you're on the date with, pick a card that you want to read out. I'll pick a card that I want to read out. And then we're kind of just having fun with this. It's not really us saying these they're not crazy, but it's not really us saying these deeper or sometimes sexual things. It's the cards. We're just doing what the cards say. And it's, like I said, a nice bridge into talking about some of these subjects. Eventually you get to a point where you just don't really need that crutch. Like, these are almost training wheels for you to be able to talk about deeper topics, or for you to be able to talk about sex. Eventually at some point you're just on the date and you're like, yo, hey, what sexual stuff have you always wanted to try but not done yet? What sexual stuff do you want to try if we go back to the bedroom? Like, that's how autistically honest you and I are with women. But these cards are a really nice way of getting there, and they helped us. Like, we were a little nervous to talk about these deeper topics in the beginning as well. So we would just bring these card games, and that kind of solves the problem for you.
Yeah, especially when we were kind of transitioning more towards getting to know people a little bit better on dates.
Yeah.
It was a really good tool. And it is a nice screening tool, because assuming this is something you want to do, you want to have better conversations, you want to have more interesting dates, conversationally at least. It almost screens out the people that would be off-put by that and like don't want to engage in those
People
conversations.
who
People
don't
want
want
to keep
deeper
it
topics. Yeah.
surface level, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just for us, not really what we're interested in. For any of you, date whoever the hell you want, but at least for us, it's nice being able to be on a date with someone to talk about some deeper shit other than like, what do you do for work? And if all you want is casual sex and you're not interested in going deeper or building a connection at all, which isn't necessarily something I'd encourage, like, I'd still build some sort of little mini temporary connection. But even if all you want is casual sex, these card games can help, especially this one. We have one called Extreme Personal Questions. It is literally all about sex. Like, the entire thing is just stuff on sex.
Sure, and a lot of these too, they are actually like party games, but we've never played them as such. So they have like a gamified system where you like accrue points or like take turns, but we kind of just pull out cards at random and ask questions.
We give the stack of cards to someone, say, hey, pick a couple of cards that you want to read out. I'll pick a couple of cards, and then we just read them all out. So you can use them for friendships as well, like you said. They're pretty good for relationships. We have, in particular, this one, which is custom made for just us, or it was like a limited release sort of batch. So you're not going to be able to buy these. But there are apps that are very similar. Like, there's one called Big Talk. There's one called Party Cues. And in there, they have sections on relationships. And some of these are absolutely brilliant. You and I have asked each other basically every single question in these stacks. We've asked each other like literally hundreds of questions.
Yeah, and the wooden box that you just showed, I think was actually the first one that was gifted by a friend of yours. And it got us into this as a concept, because this wasn't something we'd done until that was given as a gift. And it's actually a really cool, thoughtful gift that
An amazing gift, yeah.
we've loved, yeah.
These are really, really, really good relationship prompting questions to like explore deeper. Questions like, what was something that we did last week that we think we could improve next week? We've kind of taken some of these for our accountability check-in. So once a week, we will do a accountability check-in with each other, talk about how the relationship's going, what we would improve, what we're grateful for, what we're happy with, blah, blah, blah. A lot of the time, we've just taken questions from these. Like, what would you do better in the relationship? What's one thing that I feel I'm not getting in the relationship, and how could we both work towards getting that or giving me that?
Yeah, what's something fun that we can plan for next week together, things like that.
Yeah, and there's even questions here on if you're planning to have kids. Like, how do we want to raise our children? What are the principles we want to live by? So you can see that some of these card games go quite deep, and then others are just a little bit more sexual or flirty or fun. Some of them are just deep and meaningful questions about like your childhood. Like, what's something from your childhood that you've never told anyone else, but you've always wanted to share? You just don't know how to share it. What's something that you really want to brag about, but you don't know how to brag about it because you feel bad? Brag to me now. Like, they break the meta of what a conversation is in some ways. Like, we have these rules of like, you can't talk about that. We can't talk about deep topics. I've even had comments on this channel where people will say, but you can't talk about deep topics on a date. It's like, yes, you fucking can. You're just scared to. Or say that you don't want to. And if you don't want to, fair enough. But you can talk about literally anything you want on a first date. We do.
Yeah, and I guess maybe not obvious, but the statement after that is that, and not everyone's going to be into that. And I think that's why people have the rule of like, you can't say that or you can't do that, is because then they're worried it's going to off-put some people. But if it's something that you care about and you're interested in, it's a good thing if people aren't into that, because then you guys probably aren't going to be compatible.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to find the people that are into the things that you're into.
Yeah, I could go off on a little side tangent rant here. So many of you live your lives in fear, and you live your dating life in fear, and you're like, but what if he or she doesn't like what I have to say? What if I put them off? Good, then they'll leave. You two are not compatible. You'll go find the person that you're compatible with, or the people that you're compatible with. You don't have to live in fear of like, what if I upset someone? Obviously, don't try and piss people off. But like, What if someone doesn't like me or my principles or my values? What if they don't like my hobbies? So many of you are nerdy as fuck, turbo, ultra, mega nerds. Hey, welcome to the club, so am I. And then you're terrified of like, what if she finds out I'm a nerd? Good. The sooner she finds that out, the better. She'll either like you or not care and just be like, whatever, that's part of him. I don't judge that. I'm glad he's having fun with his nerdy little shit. She probably won't say it like that. She'll either be happy with it or neutral, or she really won't like that you're nerdy and she'll leave. We've had quite a few guys in the coaching group that are nervous about the fact that they really like anime and cosplay, and they're terrified of women finding out. What are you into, you big freaking cosplay nerd? Especially when you were growing up. You literally
Not
cosplayed.
really now. When I
Yeah,
was
but you
in
cosplay.
high school, I was, yeah.
Cosplay turbo virgin nerd right here.
That was a long time ago. But I
The
would
point
be
is
into it now.
There's tons of women
I like
that
dressing up.
cosplay. Bottom line, these card games are incredibly helpful. They're also available as apps. Our favorite one is Party Cues, and we just sometimes pull that out on a date. Like literally, we'll sometimes just be like, let's talk about this.
Or sometimes even when we're like just together and we want
Yeah.
to build some connection, or even when we're hanging out with Bronwyn, the girl that we've been dating for a couple of years now, it's just a nice way to prompt some conversation and like reconnect with the person that's in front of you,
Yeah, for sure.
regardless of whether that's somebody that you've just met or somebody that you've been with for years.
Yeah, so great for deep questions, great for interesting questions, great for breaking through that boring bullshit small talk, great as a bridge to start talking about sex or to start flirting a little bit, and really great for deeper relationships and friendships and all of that. We will leave maybe links in the description to some of the card games that we play, that we have, that we recommend. I'll also leave links to the coaching program if you're interested in changing your life, building an awesome sex life, building a business, losing weight, being happy, finding peace and love, and all of that beautiful shit. Links down below. As always,
Go out there and crush your goals.